Story 1: GF cheated during apartment hangout a few months back. During the start of summer, my girlfriend and I had invited friends over to our apartment for drinks, bonfires, and fun. While I was asleep in our bedroom, she cheated on me in our apartment. Coincidentally, while I was out picking up food for both of us, my childhood best friends unexpectedly gathered where I was. Happily surprised, I invited them over to our apartment for a bonfire and hanging out since it was a Friday night. They all agreed, and that night turned out to be one of the most enjoyable I'd had in a long time. We began making this a regular weekend event, and everyone was thoroughly enjoying it. Although my girlfriend tended to get touchy when she drank, she always assured me she would never cheat and had a strong dislike for cheaters. Because of this, I wasn't overly concerned when she interacted closely with my friends. I had complete faith in her. However, one of my friends had recently come out of a long-term relationship and was feeling quite lonely. They found common ground and talked late into the night due to shared interests. A significant topic of conversation was their shared experience of losing an uncle they had both cared deeply about, which she referred to as trauma bonding. Skipping ahead a few weeks, the regular gatherings were still ongoing. On one occasion, my old friends and I were partying, and during this time, my girlfriend became particularly close to one of them. After everyone else had left and I had passed out drunk in our bedroom, she ended up hooking up with him, only to later deny the incident. The partying continued until around 6 a.m., at which point I joined a few friends in smoking some weed. This quickly led to me falling asleep on our couch. I eventually woke up in our bedroom around noon, battling a hangover. Realizing my girlfriend wasn't beside me, I ventured out to the living room where I found just the two of them. They were both fully clothed, sharing music. I briefly sat down next to her before suggesting we call it a night. After we settled into bed, she began softly crying and uttered, "I love you." Immediately, I sensed that something was amiss. She confessed that while they were heavily intoxicated, he had kissed her, but she insisted it didn't go beyond that. Despite my anger and the urge to take action, she pleaded with me not to be furious with him or harm him, so I acquiesced. Suppressing my anger, I drove him home. The entire day felt unsettling, and I repeatedly asked her if there was more to the story, each time receiving reassurances that nothing else had occurred. During my graveyard shift the following night, my girlfriend headed out to the bar with the same group of people. Fueled by insecurity, I decided to leave work and join them at the bar. However, her reaction was unexpected. She lashed out, branding me with derogatory language and accusing me of lacking trust, suggesting I'd left work solely to keep tabs on her. A friend later disclosed that he had seen her phone and read a message she sent to her sister, confessing to cheating. Enraged, I stormed out of the bar, but I eventually convinced her to return to our apartment. Once there, I presented her with an ultimatum. She had to reveal the truth at that moment, or I would leave. I never even considered the possibility that she had engaged in a physical relationship with him, as I had unwavering faith in her. When faced with the ultimatum, she hesitated and said, "If I tell you, you'll leave me," and in that very moment, I understood. Swiftly, I packed my suitcases and headed to my mom's place, grappling with the reality of the situation. I attempted to reach out to the friend responsible, simply asking him for an explanation. However, he blocked me on all communication platforms. Following my departure, I returned to the apartment a few hours later to collect more of my belongings. During this time, she made a distressing threat by holding anxiety pills and knives, suggesting she might harm herself. I immediately contacted the police, who intervened and transported her to the hospital for observation. In the subsequent days, she bombarded me with numerous texts, confessing it was a mistake fueled by alcohol and pleading for me not to leave. Within our friend group, most members sided with me, understanding what had transpired. However, a few remained undecided, attempting to stay neutral and support both perspectives. As a result, I chose not to engage with those who were straddling the fence. Despite his hurtful actions, he had the audacity to cut me off. I took it upon myself to ensure that everyone in our circle was aware of what transpired and how they both betrayed me. I made sure to reveal his true character to our group, labeling him as the deceitful and reprehensible individual that he was. Story 2. Wife's half-brother surprised my wife and I, married for 10 months and together for 4 years, never faced any issues in our relationship. We were close friends before getting married and had a strong bond. She often spoke about her half-brother, whom I never met due to his troubled past involving substance abuse and prison. Surprisingly, he appeared at her family Easter gathering after years of absence. She was both surprised and happy about his presence, as she had always desired a closer sibling connection with him despite their distant childhood relationship. About a month of consistent texting and weekly hangouts led them to take a DNA test. Her mom and his dad had a short relationship, prompting the need for clarity on their potential relation. It turned out they weren't actually related by blood. Despite this news, she expressed her desire to maintain a relationship with him, which I found a bit unsettling given her strained relationship with her other siblings. Since he had recently been released from prison, he was temporarily staying with his mother. However, due to his inability to follow her rules, he was eventually asked to leave her home. Despite my reservations and objections, my wife chose to invite him and his 2 kids to move in with us. Approximately 1 to 2 weeks after discovering their lack of relation, my wife's behavior towards me began to change. She grew distant, with reduced communication and less frequent responses to my calls when we were apart. This situation worsened when he moved into our home. Despite my gut feeling that something was off, I couldn't pinpoint the issue precisely. Adding to my discomfort, she felt compelled to immediately answer his calls. This led to arguments between us, escalating to the point where I questioned if they were involved romantically. My inquiry angered her, and she vehemently denied any romantic involvement, asserting that she saw him purely as a brother. However, I found it difficult to believe her. Due to my persistent gut feeling, I decided to install cameras around our home. Initially, there was no unusual activity, but things changed when an argument erupted between them in my absence. He packed his and his children's belongings and declared they wouldn't return. After a few days, it seemed they had resolved their issues, but he had found his own place and only visited us occasionally. Jumping ahead by a week, I returned from work to discover that the peanuts I typically kept for myself were missing. Knowing my wife's nut allergies, I couldn't help but suspect her supposed half-brother. I questioned my wife about his visit, to which she denied it but appeared somewhat unsettled. Devastated by what I discovered through the camera footage, I witnessed my wife and her half-brother engaged in an intimate act on my living room couch. Filled with anger, I confronted her, and as she broke down, she confessed that there was something she needed to reveal. That's when she admitted to the affair with him, explaining that after realizing they weren't related, they had fallen in love and started a sexual relationship. I was horrified, as I had envisioned a lifelong partnership with her. She pleaded and begged for forgiveness, claiming he exploited her vulnerability. However, I couldn't accept her excuses. Since the house was in my name and I had purchased it before our marriage, I made the decision to ask her to leave our home that very day. I wasted no time in reaching out to a divorce lawyer to initiate the legal process. After 2 weeks, she discovered she was pregnant, and I suspect it's his child. We had made 2 previous attempts to have a child, both ending in miscarriages. The most recent loss occurred just before Easter and was particularly difficult, leading us to decide to postpone trying again for a while. While I was being cautious, he wasn't practicing the same restraint and continued to have unprotected encounters with her. Unfortunately, we are required to live separately for a year and a day before I can initiate the filing process. Fortunately, my military service allows me to claim that I've been away, which means I can start the filing in a few months. In my state, due to her infidelity, she won't be entitled to any support from me, and since we don't share much in terms of assets, this situation becomes less complicated. We didn't have a prenuptial agreement in place. As things unfold, I anticipate that she might eventually attempt to return and persuade me to help raise the baby. While part of me is angry and wishes she does come back, so I can dismiss her, I understand that these emotions are complex and challenging to navigate. Story 3: Wife's AP Job Dilemma. 3 days ago on D-Day, I discovered text messages between my wife and the AP. Despite this, she's unwilling to leave her job where she interacts with the AP. We've been married for 2 years, together for 3, and due to her career focus, having kids isn't currently on the table. About a week ago, I began to observe unusual behavior from my wife. She started being secretive with her phone, taking it even into the shower, and changed her password, which raised my suspicions. Unable to bear the uncertainty, I sought help to access her phone, and what I discovered was deeply shocking. I found explicit messages and images being exchanged between her and a coworker I had encountered a few times. Initially, she attempted to deny it when confronted, but the evidence gathered from her phone left no room for doubt. She admitted they had been intimate a few times, but she claimed it was limited to that. The news devastated me, leading me to ask her to leave the house to avoid any violent reactions. The following morning, still in shock, I went to work as I wasn't sure how to handle my emotions. During the day, my clarity returned slightly, and I realized she had gone to work at the same job he was at. The day passed in a blur of panic, anxiety, and anger. Upon returning home that evening, I discovered her waiting on the porch. Driven by my hurt, I couldn't contain my emotions and ended up uttering hurtful words, releasing all the pain I was feeling. Her frustration grew, and she questioned whether I genuinely wanted to mend things. She made a valid point that I couldn't keep bringing it up indefinitely. It's important to note that less than 24 hours had passed since D-Day, and this was our initial substantial discussion on the matter. Yesterday, the plan was for her to resign from her job and disclose the affair to her boss. Instead, she contacted my pastor to request more time for consideration. She wished to delay her decision until the weekend, ultimately opting to make her choice on Monday. I expressed to her that if she harbored resentment towards me for quitting her job, our relationship might not withstand such a scenario. I emphasized that the decision to quit had to be hers alone, but if she stayed without being committed to quitting, I couldn't guarantee my reactions. I conveyed that for us to succeed, she needed to genuinely want to quit. As of now, she remains undecided, frequently inquiring about the likelihood of our relationship's success. I sense she's prolonging her decision. The mere question of whether she should quit or not reveals much about her feelings. She seeks some form of assurance that things will work out before she takes the step to quit. However, even if I could provide such reassurance, it seems she still hesitates to leave her job. When I inquired about where she went after asking her to leave, she admitted to spending the night with her affair partner, further igniting my anger. Upon entering the house, I packed up all my belongings while she shouted and begged, explaining that she acted out of desperation. For the time being, I'm planning to reside at my mom's place. We live on her family property, so I've got to be the one who leaves, unfortunately. I've established a new bank account under my name and arranged for direct deposit to start on Monday. I require space to recover without her inadvertently intensifying the healing process. My sense of self has been entwined with hers, necessitating that I rediscover who I am.